We will now reconvene this meeting. A quorum is still present, and the time is 6:45.
You didn't call roll yet.
I did.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
At this time, we are down to acknowledgements of visitors and citizens to be heard. The first person that we have is Marilyn McKinney.
I come to you this evening as a confused constituent. You have consistently told us, the taxpayers of this district, that you have a deficit situation, a rather significant one. And yet at the same time, you continue to spend money that you apparently don't have. I am concerned. And while this evening it's merely $25,000, which on the grander scale is probably a mere drop in the bucket, I do know that, if you turn off the lights when you leave the room, and at the end of the day you shut all of this contraption down, you do save money. Those little pennies drops in the buckets add up. So I would request respectfully that you at some point start asking the question that dear Mr. LaFoyle used to ask at any point when you wanted to spend some money. How are we going to pay for this? How much is it going to cost? And think long and hard before you spend that money that you don't seem to have. Now, I understand you have cut programs because I sit here and listen each month to what you've cut. You've cut tax resources, but you didn't save that money. You used it to pay for 6 extra days for the specialists. You cut iStation, but you're going to have to replace that with some other program. So you really haven't saved any money there either. And the $20,000 that was ostensibly left over from the tax resource system, $20,000, that's gone tonight with a $5,000 deficit. I can't run my house like that. Ladies, you run budgets on a household on a monthly, daily basis. You can't run a school district like that either. I plead with you to become more financially conservative, because as my valuation, my taxes don't go up, but my valuation does, so I pay you more money each year. And I can't see that what is happening is good. I see that you are digging at the foundation, digging away at the foundation at the elementary level in the district. And I know a house with a hole in its foundation can't stand. So I have grave concerns in terms of fiscal responsibility and in terms of how you are trying to meet that fiscal responsibility. And I request that I know that you do take this quite seriously, but think long and hard and responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKinney. Next, we have Ms. Ortiz, Libraries.
Good evening. My name is Mariah Ortiz, and I am lucky enough to serve as the librarian at Judson High School. Since February, one of the JISD librarians has spoken about in the public comments portion of the monthly board meetings to share a book with the board and our superintendent. And each month, these comments have examined the power of school libraries in the lives of students. But last week, however, we celebrated Teacher Appreciation Week. So this month, we thought we'd share a new book that celebrates the power of teachers. Because I Had a Teacher by Kobe Yamada. Because I Had a Teacher, writes Yamada, I discovered that there are lots of ways of being smart, and I know that mistakes are just part of getting something right. Because I had you as my teacher, I learned to believe in me. As a librarian, I can tell you I love teachers. They have the power to change kids' lives. That's exactly why I became a teacher. What I discovered about myself, however, is that one of my favorite things is helping another teacher to grow, thereby benefiting more students. I became a librarian because I love helping other educators, supporting their needs so that they can support their learners. Sometimes that support is a resource presented at just the right time, the right book, a cart of Chromebooks, and an idea to turn a plain assignment into a project-based learning opportunity. Sometimes that resource is just a cup of coffee from our Friday fuel-up station, or a giant inflatable screen, or even a poncho shared in the midst of a rainy softball game. In the best moments, however, what I lend to teachers is expertise and just a little extra patience. This week, as I worked with a frustrated teacher who was working with an Excel project, after his document was completed quickly and exactly as he wanted, he commented, "You know, I learned so much from you in just 5 minutes, more than if I had taken a whole class, and you make it seem so simple." I just smiled and reminded him, it was simple because you were ready to learn it, and I was there to support you and celebrate your learning of it. When instruction is personalized to the learner's exact level of need, no matter how old or young that learner is, success is almost inevitable. Because he had a librarian, this teacher grew. He grew in his willingness now to reach out whenever he needs support. More than just learning Excel that day, he learned to excel because he had a champion dedicated to making him the best teacher he could be. He had a librarian. In honor of JISD teacher librarians, we want to thank the Judson Independent School District board members and our superintendent, Dr. Ball, for working to keep librarians in schools to support all learners, the little ones and the big ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz, and thank you for the book. Kevin Haddis, budget.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kevin Haddis. I'm a resident of Selma. I got 2 kids in the district. I want to start by saying thank you to everybody, the staff, the board, our new superintendent, Dr. Ball. Thank you for all the cuts you've made to get us to this point. But I watched the last regular board meeting, and I'm sure just like your facial expressions, my jaw hit the cupboard. Because we have a big problem, a really big problem. And it may take 2 budget meetings a week to get through it. But if that's what it takes, I ask you guys to please meet that often. 10% cuts are a good strategy. But this district is about people. It's about the people that work here. It's about the people that have had 1 raise in 5 years, or maybe 6, I don't even know. It's been forever. If we have to cut programs to make that happen, do it. Because if we don't retain the people, we're state average. As I learned the other day, we're right around the average in the state. We don't want to be our retention rate to be average. We have to be better than that. Find the money, cut the programs, take care of the people. Let's be great at something instead of okay at a bunch of things where people are leaving us for other employment opportunities. Ms. Bichelle, I want to thank you very much for the last meeting, for you bringing up the comment. What are we going to do about it? I'm asking you guys to take the lead on that, please. Thank you.
Thank you,
for all
Mr. Haddis. We will now move to item 4, reorganization of the Judson ISD Board leadership. The officers are President, Vice President, and Secretary. The presiding officer should take care to ensure that all who wish to make a nomination have had a chance before declaring nominations closed. Unlike a motion, a nomination does not require a second, but it is acceptable for another member who supports that nominee to second the nomination. Nominations are now in order for the office of president. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Renee Pichelle for president.
Renee Pichelle is nominated for the office of president and seconded by Ms. Eaton. Are there any other further nominations for the office of president? If there are no more nominations for the office of president, we will be voting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Then Renee Pichelle has been nominated for president. Thank you, Board. The chair states nominations are now in order for the office of Vice President. Are there any nominations for the office of Vice President? I would like to nominate Suzanne Canoyer for Vice President.
I'll second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded by Ms. Perez. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Then the office for Vice President is for Suzanne Canoyer. Congratulations. And lastly, the nominations are now in order for the office of Secretary. Are there any nominations for the office of Secretary? I would like to nominate Mr. Jose Macias. Are there any other nominations? Seconded by Mr. LaFoyle. Are there any other nominations? If you are in favor of Mr. Macias, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. And Mr. Macias is now our secretary. Congratulations, sir. Again. We will now move on to item 5, consideration of consent items. I will read each item individually, and if there is any board member that would like to pull an item, please let me know and you may pull it. Item 5A, consider and take action regarding approving board minutes from the regular meeting held on April the 18th, 2019. Item B, consider and take action regarding approving monthly financial information as of April 30th, 2019. Item C, consider and take action regarding approving expenditures equal to or greater than $50,000. Item D, consider and take action regarding approving the submittals for request for proposal 19-16, miscellaneous C&I contracted services. Pull. Item E, consider and take action regarding approving an electric line right-of-way agreement with the City Public Service Board of San Antonio. Item F, consider and take action regarding approving secondary student fees and CTE-related student fees for the 2019-2020 school year.
Pull.
Item G, consider and take action regarding approving service delivery agreement, SDA, between Communities in School and Judson ISD. Item H, consider and take action regarding approving the innovative courses offered at high school college readiness support courses beginning in the 2019-2020 school year at our comprehensive high schools. Item H, consider and take action regarding approving the renewal memorandum of understanding, the MOU, for... Oh, I'm sorry, item I. Thank you. Consider and take action regarding approving the renewal memorandum of understanding, the MOU, with Alamo College District for the 2019-2020 school year for the Judson Early College Academy. And item J, consider and take action regarding approving the revised Jeka four-year degree plan that will take effect with the 2023 graduating class and beyond. We will be voting on items A, B, E, H. Is there a motion? Motion made by Mr. Macias, seconded by Mr. LaFoyle. You may proceed to vote. Okay. Motion carries. Now we will vote, we'll start with item C. Consider and take action regarding approving expenditures equal to or greater than $50,000. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion made by Mr. LaFoille, seconded by Mr. Macias, and I believe that was Mr. Macias?
Yeah, it was a reminder. I believe the items under the $50,000 or more were to purchase bus engines. And so it's a co-op that we have. And so the reason I pulled it is just simply to remind the administration that I did request sort of a calendar in which we will be making these purchases because they're pretty sizable, and look at the viability of putting it now on a schedule for future bonds so that we can have bond funding pay for this equipment, which would obviously save us some money. So if we're able to do that on a non-tax increase bond, which we do periodically, this could be something that could be fit into that schedule and save money from our operations budget. So just to reiterate that desire to see that come. That's all I have.
Yes, we'll get that.
Okay. Now, Board, you may proceed to vote. Motion carries. Item D, consider and take action regarding approving the submittals for Request for Proposal 19-16 Miscellaneous C&I Contracted Services. Is there a motion? Motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. LaFoille. I have a question, just a very slight question, Dr. Ball.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to know, okay, wait a minute, where are my notes? Are all of these brand new?
No, ma'am. This is just a list of possible contracts that we could use. So what we have, in order to be more efficient, we have gone ahead and used a list of contracts that we could, developed a list of contractors that we could possibly use to do PD. It doesn't guarantee that we will be using them, but in case we do, we have everything taken care of.
And my other question is, how do you decide, how do you evaluate to find out whether or not you want to use them again the next year?
It depends on the services and the PD that they provide. So we use a couple of different instruments. Most of the time, we take a survey from the teachers to see if the staff development was beneficial, if they learned something from it. And then depending on what the need is, some of them specialize for some very specific needs.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Eaton. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a monetary limit on these?
Not at this time, because we're not approving, we're not going to use them right now. But if we were to go out to use some PD, we would select from this list and then bring back the amount if we
Okay.
were to use them.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
If there are no further questions, oh, Mr. Macias?
Yes, and this is PD, I guess, across the board for all employees that would need PD. Do we have the ability, obviously, to still add if we have a reason to?
Excellent question. Yes, we would, most likely, I would say 99.9, we would be adding still.
Okay, so this is sort of just a menu.
Because, sorry, didn't mean to, sometimes individuals don't get the information back to us on time. Some of them choose not to do it in a timely manner. So this is what we were able to gather from the vendors at this time.
Well, and I appreciate the list. Is there an advantage to doing it? I mean, since we still have the ability to add PD vendors at a later time, what's the biggest advantage for doing this now?
Efficiency of time, that we already have all the paperwork submitted to the Office of Purchasing. So if we were to need something, we don't have to go out and get it. If one campus, if several campuses decide to use it, it's already, the paperwork is already housed. So campuses don't have to scramble to get the paperwork together. It's already there for them.
And if this request were to come in once we approve budgets at the end of June, if it's under 50,000, you could take the lead and just approve it, but we've essentially given you this list to say you can pick from.
Correct.
If there are no
That's
other
it.
questions, then Board, you may proceed to vote. Motion passes. Item E, consider and take action regarding approving secondary student fees and CTE-related student fees for the 2019-2020 school year. Motion, is there a motion?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Perez. And Ms. Perez, I believe you're the one that pulled it?
Yes, and I think it might be item F, is that correct? Yes. Okay.
Oh, did I say E? I'm sorry, I meant F.
Okay.
For the record, it is F.
My questions is related to the student fees, just a better understanding. Are the costs associated with the various activities intended to cover all of the costs? Or are they just to augment the costs? And related to that, if there's a student that has financial, challenges, how do they participate in some of these higher-end budgetary items?
Excellent question. Thank you, ma'am. So this is the possibility of what it could cost, for example, to participate in one of these events. Most of our clubs, organizations, whether it's athletics, even CTE, choir, have lots and lots of fundraisers. So these costs aren't necessarily going to be, but we just want to give individuals the heads up, that knowing that it could cost that much, but there's always going to be fundraisers and always going to be the security of if a student wants to participate, they will not be denied because of a financial reason.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question sufficiently?
It
Are
does,
there
thank
any
you.
others for this item? Then, Board, you may proceed to vote. And this item passes. Item G, consider and take action regarding approving Service Delivery Agreement, SDA, between communities and schools and Judson ISD. Is there a motion? Motion made by Mr. Macias, seconded by Mr. LaFoille. And Mr. Macias, this one's yours.
I just pulled this item just to commend the administration for moving forward with communities and schools. I'm very excited to see their impact here in our community, and I'm just pumped. But I guess in terms of the evaluation aspect of communities and schools, what are some of the key things that we can expect with their engagement with our district this year?
Of course, one of the main focuses will be the needs of the students, whether it's the social emotional needs, whether it's the family needs, and at all times we'll be looking to make sure that the needs of the students are met. So we'll have a very strong working relationship with the individuals from communities and schools to make sure that we're evaluating. I know that they use a method to keep track of all the students that are serviced, how much time is spent, what they're doing to work with them. So we'll use that data to evaluate the program at the end of the year.
And this is a one-year contract, right?
I'm going to have to ask Dr. Cantu to help me remember that if it's more than one. I believe it's more than 1 year. It's multiple.
Yes, our partnership is a 3-year partnership. However, this MOU is for 1 year. And I would just like to add to what Dr. Ball was talking about. If you look at your packet, Section 9 talks about a pre-test and a post-test. So students will be given a pre-test and a post-test, and that will help us evaluate growth once the counselors and the social workers have worked with the students.
Ms. Eaton.
I have a question. So now that we're going to fully fall up under Northeast, for the program, will the students, like I noticed one of our students is going to be attending there next year for college, and is there any way that we can talk to them and work out a deal where they get some type of a cut on the tuition? Is it something we can do?
For the students attending the Northeast
The ones that-
Lakeview?
Yes, ma'am. Especially the ones that graduated from the Jeka.
Is that related to community?
Is that related to communities and schools, Ms. Eaton?
Different item, I think.
Alamo College District? Oh, we're not on that one?
No, ma'am.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's fine, that's fine. Are there any other
Oh, the
comments?
service.
Go right
No,
ahead,
I'm
sir.
talking about I.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I appreciate the measurement, but just so I'm clear too, is their presence going to be at, across the district, or I know that we've changed our economically disadvantaged designation for
for-
title, so I just want to confirm that that is the case.
It is going to be, this time, it's going to be for the feeder pattern schools that feed into Wagner.
Right. Park Village, Kirby, Metzger, and Wagner.
And I guess that I would only like to consider where, like, campuses that we may miss that are on the cusp of qualifying as title campuses or with a higher economically disadvantaged population to be evaluated as we continue to strengthen this relationship. I'm thinking of campuses like Jeka as well, that, you know, they have a reflection of our students from across the district. So they may not be identified as economically disadvantaged, but we know that there are kids there that are. So as we look at effectiveness, campuses like that are on my mind.
I'm hoping that in working with communities and schools, there'll be other grant opportunities and that we'll be able to grow the program. And then also, Monica Garcia is working on a plan where our current social workers will also be able to touch more students' lives. So we'll share that with the board in the next few weeks to make sure that all our needs are met for our students.
Well, thank you. That's all I have.
At this time, you may proceed to vote. Motion pass, this item passes. Item I, consider and take action regarding approving the renewal MOU with Alamo Colleges District and the 2019-2020 school year for Judson Early College Academy. Is there a motion? Motion made by Ms. Canoyer, seconded by Mr. Macias. And Mr. Macias, I believe you pulled this one?
Again, another thing that I'm real proud of, and so in terms of evaluating the MOU, and I'll be quite candid, I didn't get a chance to read the whole MOU. It's been a very busy few weeks, or a couple of weeks. So I know that one year we did see an increase in fees in the MOU when I did a comparison. Since I didn't get a chance to do that, I wanted to ask administration, are there any major differences from last year versus this year's MOU?
Yes, I'll ask Dr. Gandu to please give some highlights.
Yes, the MOU that you have in your packets is the MOU between Judson ISD and Alamo Colleges District with Northeast Lakeview. This is an annual MOU, and it's pretty standard. You will notice that the changes are minimal. I'd like to highlight a couple. If you look at page 67 in your packet, there is a section on disability support services. That was something we needed to address because the college did not have certain procedures in place to address students, like if we now are accepting special ed students, how are we going to address that? So we added some support there in the language so that both entities could understand what our commitments were, was going to be. We also, a second example is on page 69. We talked about how are we going to make sure that we are always adhering to the TA regulations on the early college designation. So that's something that we're revisiting, and we are going to be bringing it to the board, not only Judson board, but also the higher ed board, to keep you guys informed of how we're making sure that we're aligning to the to the blueprint. And the last major change that I would say is one of the things that the new regulations came in, and it talks about making sure that we post information such as agendas, the minutes, any presentations that are done. So now those are posted on the Jeka website. There's a section that is entitled Blueprint. You can go there and you can see the updates of the meetings and what's happening with the collaboration efforts.
I recall, and thank you, Dr. Ball and Dr. Kent, too, the previous time that we had this issue where there were increased costs, that we were going to take strong efforts to address some of the areas there were cost savings. I haven't asked that question since that meeting, but did we and were we successful in driving down costs? I think namely one of the expenses were the books that we were being charged. So has that been sort of resolved?
There will be no tuition increase for next year. And as far as the books are concerned, we are on a 5-year cycle rotation. We were able to increase that. Originally, we started with 3-year rotations, and now we're at 5 years. And the college has been working very well with us as far as a negotiation piece to make sure that, okay, can we hold off 1 more year? And so I'm confident in saying that the cost for the instructional materials is not going up.
Well, it sounds like a good thing. Thank you.
Ms. Eaton?
Okay, so the question I was trying to ask, this is where I thought we were at. Sorry, I apologize for that. Is there, like, we have a student graduating from Jeka that is going to be attending Northeast next year. Maybe we can get together and talk with them about giving them some type of discount on tuition and stuff like that.
I like that idea. So we can, Dr. Cantú and I can meet with the president of Northwest Lakeview and see if they'd be offering something like that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Any other questions? Board, you may proceed to vote. Ms. Canoyer? Okay. All right, and this item passes unanimously. Item J, consider and take action regarding approving the revised Jeka 4-year degree plan that will take effect with the 2023 graduating class and beyond. Is there a motion? Motion made by Mr. Macias and seconded by Mr. LaFoille. Mr. Macias?
This one I pulled purely just for community information. It was on our consent agenda. And I'll just add that we had a lot of consent items. So I think this has a lot of public interest, and so I pull items for that. So Dr. Ball, if you can explain a little bit about that, what's going to take effect for community's sake.
Yes, thank you. The staff did an excellent job in evaluating which courses you take your 9th grade year, your 10th grade year, 11th grade year, and 12th grade year. And one of the things that they noticed that had to be done is the balancing of courses. We don't want one year to be more stressful or to have a lot of the rigorous courses. We want to make sure that we balance them out throughout the 4 years. So one of the examples of the things that changed was they used to take geology was being offered, but then when they noticed that geology is not being awarded credit when they transfer, that is not in the best interest of the students. So they're going to replace that with a class where they can get credit, and they'll be taking the general psychology class. So what this really allowed is for the staff to look at the different courses, make sure that they transfer so the students never lose any credit, and that it's also well balanced throughout the 4 years.
I appreciate that information. I will tell you that last month, I believe, I was asked to testify in terms of college courses not transferring uniformly within the state of Texas, specifically the A&M and UT system. So is this an attempt from our side to try to align that better so that, you mentioned the transfer part of it, so that they're not losing credit when they transfer?
You're absolutely correct. Mm-hmm.
Oh, very good. Well, thank you.
And all of these will transfer, correct? Every one of these will transfer.
I'm going to ask Dr. Cantú to correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that they will, right?
Yes, Dr. Ball, the great majority will, Ms. Pichelle, but one of the things that every university has different standards. So what we have done is we evaluated the courses and identified those that would be most transferable. And so what we have done, for example, the English 1301, the 1302, the History 1 and History 2, we know that those are going to transfer almost everywhere in the country. So we made sure that we identified courses that were the most transferable. There are some exceptions to some universities don't accept certain things, but for the most part, we have done our due diligence in identifying transferable and degree applicable courses.
Thank you. Ms. Canoyer.
Thank you. May I address Dr. Cantú? Dr. Cantú, is this a follow-up from the meeting that we attended last year over at St. Philip's College? Wasn't it St. Philip's? Wasn't it?
Yes,
Where
ma'am.
we talked, I know that there was a lot of discussion about this particular item, and that the universities we were partnering with had noticed that when they were sending transcripts on, the students were saying that a lot of the courses didn't transfer. And so I appreciate that you've taken this on, because we certainly, want to brag about them graduating with an associate's degree, but then if they still have more than 2 years left at a 4-year school, we really haven't done them the favor that we think we're doing. So I want to say thank you very much for this.
Yes, sir.
And I agree, and not only is it costing time, but it's costing money. So we certainly want to address that. And I had one final thought, and gosh darn it, it escaped me. But anyway, just kudos on all of this. And I think this is all important. I know what it was. House Bill 335. There is going to be follow-up, because that's a bill that's in session now that addresses this particular issue. So I'll share with everyone when I hear more about that.
Are there any further questions, comments? At this time, Board, you may proceed to vote. And this motion passes unanimously. We will move on to item 6, discussion, consideration of action items. Item A, consider and take action regarding approving amending the Judson ISD compensation plan for the 2018-19 fiscal year to change the Assistant Athletic Coordinator stipend to Athletic Coordinator stipend for high school and middle school athletics. Dr. Ball. Absolutely, we need a motion. Is there a motion? Motion made by Mr. Macias.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Perez. Dr. Ball.
Yes, one of the things that our staff is constantly doing is looking and evaluating. As it was mentioned before, the people in our system are truly the most important individuals, and we're always looking and making sure that we're doing the right thing for people. And over the years, what has happened is there used to be before a difference between an athletic coordinator and the assistant athletic coordinator. But then in evaluating the duties and their responsibilities, it has morphed into that the assistant athletic coordinator is doing equal or more, or just about, more sometimes, duties. So we want to make sure that we're fair. And what I am proposing is that we have 2 athletic coordinators and do away with the assistant, for the reason that it has developed into the positions that are the same.
Is there a discussion? Mr. Macias.
Yeah, I had a lot of trouble with this particular item when I asked you to give me some background on it. And so I wanted to reflect on it. As Ms. McKinney had alluded, we're spending more money at a time we don't have more money. But the driving principle that you didn't say, but you truly meant, is that there was inequities. And there needs to be equity in terms of work that's being done. Compensation needs to equal that. And so in looking at that, that's more critical. I mean, we need to find a way to save money, but we can't have inequities in terms of performance. If you're doing the work, you should be compensated for that. And so that's sort of where I ended up on that. But I'll tell you, it's still, I'm still thinking we still got to save money. So another aspect that I know that this board has considered through the years is to, at one point, through attrition, not fill our athletic director positions, because we have 2 of them. So at some juncture, we're going to get to a point through attrition, because we're not letting anyone go, that we will have 1 athletic director. And I think that it was stated, since we have athletic coordinators at each campus, they could service the children that we need. And so that's where I think I found a happy medium, in terms that we are going to take efforts to reduce budget expenses, but we're going to do what's right and work on equity. So there's a win-win in that. So I don't know who's going to retire first, but on the athletic director side, but the first one to retire. But obviously, attrition is probably going to be what we do in that regard, and that way we can move forward in the best and most efficient way. So.
Anyone else? Yes, go right ahead, Ms. Rodriguez.
it was my privilege to go over the agenda this time around, and this was originally on the consent agenda, but I thought it was very important to discuss in the public that this was an equity issue, and I absolutely hear the call for fiscal responsibility, and I think we can't do that on the backs of people doing work that is important work that needs to be done, and compensating them fairly for that. So, thank you.
Ms. Perez? Anyone else? Ms. Canoyer?
I absolutely support this. Again, this is, for me, is an equity issue. It hasn't been said, but it comes out to be the male versus female issue. The assistant coordinators have, in most part, have been the female head coaches or whoever's taking over the role of supervising the women's programs. And in light of Title IX, in light of fairness, we want to grow our women's programs, absolutely, and some of them are our shining stars right now. So I support this. I agree. Money is always an issue. But as you said, Ms. Rodriguez, we can't do it on the backs of our employees who are working hard. And, we can't go back and compensate them for the years past. But we can start now in an interest of fairness and making sure that they're compensated fairly now.
Go right ahead, Dr. Ball.
We do have these 3 women in our audience, and I feel compelled to recognize them because they do work hard. They're amazing women that we should look up to. So thank you, ladies, for all you do. Thank you.
And lastly, I just want to say I too support this, and thank you, Ms. Canoyer, for being very specific, because really that's what it boils down to. And in this day and age that we're living in, there's a lot of emphasis placed on the inequity. And it's time. It's time for our females to be paid for the work that they do and to be as equal as our male counterparts. So yes, ma'am, I totally support this, and thank you for all your work that you do. At this time, Board, we may proceed to vote. Yes, sir.
I have a comment. As a male on this board, I just got to throw in, somebody put the gender issue. Can't leave my males out of this. But I don't know where and how things went awry, but I'm glad that Dr. Ball and through your leadership identified that. I do want to say that I'm sure that our athletic coordinators do a lot of hard work as well. So collectively, that's important, that we're all working hard. But again, I commend this being brought up. I will tell you, if employees don't speak up about some of these inequities, the board and the administration is unaware. So it takes a courageous employee to say, I need to say something. We encourage you to, because we got to make things right at every opportunity. Thank you.
At this time, Board, you may proceed to vote. Ms. Eaton? All right, unanimous. Item B will be closed session. We will move on to item 7, discussion items reports. 7A, superintendent report, construction update. Dr. Ball?
Yes, that was provided in the packet. I don't know if there's any questions, but you did receive that information.
Are there any questions? Item B, discuss moving fiscal year budget timeline to August the 31st, CE local. Mr. Macias?
I put this just for our discussion. I know that fiscal years are different across the state, so they're not all ending on June 30th. So there were a couple of reasons why I thought this might be advantageous for us to consider and have administration evaluate the possibility of doing this. One is simply timing. When we're doing budgets and we're starting in February, it's halfway through the school year. So we have administration that's really tasked with doing their day-to-day job. So if we have a calendar year that ends in August, we have the summer to be very aggressive after the school year ends to do a lot of really good budget workshops and put the attention on the budget where it needs to be. So that was one reason why I thought maybe we should explore it. The other one is strategic because we're competing for employees. And so one of the things that puts Judson at a disadvantage is that districts like Northside have a later budget approval time. So they're watching the whole spectrum of things, seeing what districts are doing in terms of compensation. And then by the time we pass our budget June 30th, they're able to evaluate it all during the month of July and August before they approve their budgets and say, we're going to do this to maintain sort of a competitive edge in the employee retention game. And so if we're going to really equalize that, it makes sense to have something around the same time so we're competing and we're not showing all our cards and they're able to kind of beat us to the punch. We need to try every tactic possible to keep our employees, and I think those are two really strong reasons to consider the merits and if logistically it's even viable.
Dr. Ball, what I'd like to know are what are the pros and cons, and what is the cost benefit or not of doing this? I'd like to know who's it going to benefit more, and just what are the pros and cons of this?
So in preparing for the meeting, I immediately went to Mr. Atkins and asked him, is this going to cost us more? And I also myself wanted to know the pros and cons. So I know he has some information that I'd like for him to share.
Yes, ma'am. Board, there's a couple reasons why, and I agree with you. It's definitely easier on the administration if the budget were approved in August and goes forward. It does put a hardship on the campuses, though, because that's when they're opening up. And as we're closing the year down, we close their budgets, so they don't have their budgets to spend. So it becomes a real problem at the campus level. So opening up their budgets right after we come back from July, then they have July and August to get their supplies if they forgot something or they need something. It's really good for the campuses on that end. When you move from because all schools at one time were September to August, and then the legislature opened up the option to move to a July to June. And so Judson has chosen to do that. And the year you do that, you actually increase fund balance because you only have 10 months worth of expenditures in that fiscal year. If we were to go back the other direction, we would actually have to use fund balance because we would have 14 months worth of expenditures in a fiscal year. So there is some cost to it to go back to the September 1st date, but it can be done.
Ms. Canoyer.
I remember the days when we did have the budget ending in September, and one of the biggest arguments against it was how it impacted pay for our new teachers. So rather than they would come and work and work and work before they actually got a paycheck because of the way the pay cycle started. Starting with our new budget July 1, the minute they start to work, they get a paycheck the very next payday. And especially for our brand new teachers who are trying to set up a classroom, trying to buy supplies, it's a lot of out-of-pocket money and a long time to wait to get a paycheck. And so that was a factor that we looked at.
I remember those days as a brand new teacher. I wanted to get my first check in August and it didn't come till September. And I was like, eek. Go right ahead.
So my question is, so I agree that there's probably a lot of problems that might be created by moving this. I also understand that, the Texas legislature, while it is scheduled to close on May 30th, rarely does. And so my question is, if the legislative session gets extended, which has a huge impact on our budget, and say we have to pass a budget before the state budget has been done, what happens then? Do we just go with the regular formula until we hear otherwise and then amend the budget on the back end?
Yes, ma'am, we will, and really, if we don't hear something soon, we will move forward with current law and do our budget, and then whenever they make a decision, we will come back and amend the budget based upon whatever they decide.
And then I had a question for Mr. Macias. I'm having a little trouble understanding the logic around teacher retention by moving the budget, because teachers have to give notice to their school districts if they're going to move within a local area. So if they're not moving more than, I think, 90 miles away, then they have to give notice by mid-July. And so it seems like it would be an advantage in teacher retention to have our budget set and have people clear on what the compensation plan is going to be for the upcoming year to retain teachers because then it gets it done before they hit that deadline to move. But maybe I was misunderstanding you.
Well, you might be right. I mean, this is why we're having the conversation. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm a certified expert on this, but essentially as a team, we need to evaluate what those merits look like. And if July 15th, I think, is that date where those decisions need to be made. The reason why I alluded to retention is because we've had turnover issues in this district. So the fact of the matter is we need to try some things differently. And if by moving this budget was going to be advantageous, then I certainly want to explore that. If there's no value in retention, then that takes away one of the guiding principles. So that may not be as strong. But, I certainly want to talk about it. I would just say in follow-up, I hate to hear that it would be increased cost without knowing what that increased cost would be. So if we are talking about an increased cost, I'd like to know what that dollar figure is. And maybe it's not a burning desire, but I mean, if you know there's going to be an increase, you should have a ballpark of what that might look like. The only way that I probably would want to proceed with this would be if we knew it could work on the retention part. And if it's not, then it's mute, in my opinion. But I know that Northside has successfully used this model. Other districts have used this model. Somehow they're operational and they're not looking to switch, as far as I know. So it's working for someone or for some districts. So I guess confirming, and I guess you can confirm beyond the shadow of the doubt that there is no advantage in terms of retention. And once you've confirmed that, I'll trust that decision because you'll have it in black and white on what that may do. But we need to look at it from that spectrum, from that lens. And if you look at when we used to be down this budget cycle, what our turnover rate looked like previously, I bet you it was probably lower than it is now. So I'm not saying that's the only issue, but certainly that's really what's driving this thought process. And naturally when you compete, you want to be all in the same field. So I just think there has to be something positive to competing with neighboring districts and having the same budget cycle. But in the short run, just give me a cost of what that change would look like, just for my own sake.
Do you already have it? Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am. I looked at it really, roughly, it's going to be about $5 million is what it would cost for those 2 months' worth of expenditures.
And would that be 14 months continuously?
Yes, sir, because typically we would have our 12 months, July through June, and then we would add July and August, and then start our new fiscal year, and then we would have 12 months after that.
Yeah,
So-
then it would be 12 months after that.
Yes,
So
sir.
it would be 14 months during the
Right,
transition.
So it would just be that one time.
Okay, so it would,
Yes, sir.
yeah, okay. So it's not forever, it's just one time.
Any others? Let's move on. Item 7C, discuss revising the policy of electing board officers, BDAA local. Mr. Macias, I'd like to ask, would you mind if we discuss this in closed session, sir?
We have to name names, but yeah, I wouldn't mind.
You would not?
No,
Then, board, we're going to move item C.
but are we legally permitted? We can do that? We can move this item to closed session, sort of like as personnel?
Yes, sir.
We have the,
I just needed your permission.
okay, that's fine.
Item D, update on board advisory committees. I'll start with Ms. Eaton. Did you have any information for us?
Let's see. That's all the stuff. Okay. Well, I went to the, no? The facilities meeting, is that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, we had the facilities meeting at Kitty Hawk. Thank you, sir. Very informative about the things that are going on with the construction over there. And that we had our first budget meeting, but I understand we're getting ready to have another one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. And
Ms. Canoyer?
do we talk about the other stuff that we went to? Okay.
The curriculum committee did not meet, and finance committee, we're in the middle of budget, so we're not meeting either since we're doing it all in session.
Yes. Mr. Macias?
I believe our next meeting for long-range planning is scheduled for June 5th, so we'll have more to report at that time.
Okay. Mr. LaFoille?
Nothing.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Oh, it's under,
Same, I will be attending the Strategic Planning Committee in June.
And Ms. Perez, we're going to get you on a committee.
Look forward to it.
Okay. Item E, update on board training, conferences, events, and future agenda items requested by board members. I'll start on this end. Ms. Perez, is there anything you'd like to see on our next agenda for June? Ms. Rodriguez? Do you have anything? Mr. LaFoille?
Nothing.
Mr. Macias?
There will be, I don't know yet, though.
Okay, Ms. Canoyer?
Nothing for the agenda, but I've had a great time out at Veterans Memorial High School the other day with the opening of the new ROTC obstacle course that's out there. Our Raider team at Veterans Memorial worked really hard, and our wonderful Lowe's and Shirts has been a super sponsor for making sure that the materials and some of the labor and providing some construction equipment to help dig holes in that crazy rock ground that we have out there to get it started. I'm very excited about the opportunity that gives our district to maybe host an event, a competition, and to give our kids practice. After having it set up, the next tournament that they went to, they won first place because they had an opportunity to practice the actual maneuvers and obstacles that were required. So just wanted to share that. And opportunity also exists for our other district schools to take advantage of it as well.
Ms. Eaton?
the Wagner High School, the fashion department, they had an awesome, awesome fashion show, totally student-led and run. And I tell you, we have some talent in our district, because those young people turned out some outfits that I was trying to figure out how I could get it before I left out of there. So thanks to Wagner. We had an amazing luncheon for our librarians here. Thank you, ma'am. You guys are awesome, and it was such a pleasure to join in celebrating you all. That was awesome. If you have not had an opportunity to talk to some of our Future Farmers of America, that's another awesome, awesome group of students, you know. We use the word awesome and amazing, but it's true. When you go to these events and you talk to these students and you see how passionate they are about these things, I loved it. I spoke with a couple of the students after I went to the banquet and the award ceremony for FFA, and the first portion of that actually reminded me of an organization I belong to, which really caught my attention because of the discipline and the things that they have to remember just to open up session, and I loved it. But I spoke with a couple of the students, and the programs that they have, they're great. I love it. I love it. And I attempted to go to the Jeka signing ceremony, and we had a little incident. But anyway, we'll fix that next time. But this has just been a great couple of weeks, just enjoying hearing from the students and seeing all the hard work that the teachers have poured into them throughout the school year being manifested right before us, and it was wonderful. Thank you.
That's great, Ms. Eaton, thank you. And I just want to remind everybody that we have SLI in San Antonio, June the 13th through the 16th, is that right, Ms. Holmes? So SLI is coming up, and hopefully that we can all be in attendance. I'm working on it. I've started working on it, but I haven't finished yet, so I will. If there isn't anything else, then at 7:45, we are going to adjourn into closed session. According to, pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Section 551.074, discussing personnel, the personnel report, and updates including new hires, resignations, and administrative appointments. It is 7:45.